This is Hunter Wade at the Athletes Lounge podcast, and this is my GOAT guest, Coach Mike Hilliard with USI Cross Country.
How you doing? Thanks for having me on.
So, Coach, let's just jump into it. USI has had a bunch of, I guess, movement lately with jumping up an entire athletic level. So, how has that change affected you, if at all?
Well, it's there's definitely long term it's all positive. In the short term, we've taken a few hits. The most painful aspect of it is for the first 4 years that we are in Division 1, we are not postseason eligible.
Yes.
So what that means, well, if we rewind the clock about 30 years, 31 years, I was going into my senior year as a student athlete at Southeast Missouri State. They announced that they were transitioning. I had 1 year of eligibility remaining. I wanted to be able to compete on an NCAA stage, so I transferred to Southern Indiana. So now 30 some years later, I'm now on the other end of that as a coach, and I had some athletes that were in the same position. One, Titus Winders, he had just won, in fact, won the 5,000 and the 3,000 at the D2 Indoor National Championship, set championship records in both, I think 13:38 in the 5K, 7:57 in the 3,000. And he had 1 year remaining, so he was the first guy in my office in tears because that's not what he wanted to do, but he needed to do it, because he's a guy that could and should be competing on a national stage in his last year. So he finished up at Iowa State. His brother Silas, who's a 406 miler, went with him. Another transferred to North Central, and he ran 14:01 for 5K this year. So we had a pretty good team this past fall. Don't get me wrong, but you throw those three in, and that's a really good squad. Um, the first year it hurt with recruiting a little bit. Someone's coming in to 4 years of college, 5 if they take a redshirt year, and even if they redshirt, they won't be eligible and postseason eligible until their senior year. Now we're at a point where the kids in the 2024 recruits that we're talking to, by the time they start, they redshirt a year, they'll sit a year, compete 1 year, and by their sophomore redshirt year, we're postseason eligible. So we're already starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel with it, but those are some of the drawbacks, and that's really where the drawbacks end. The positives are, from a recruiting standpoint, to be honest, as hard as you want to, recruit the best athletes that you possibly can, and despite the fact that our program had been very competitive against most D1s in the Midwest for a long time, even when we were Division 2, the mindset of most high school seniors, and it's just what they've been fed, is it's Division 1 or bust.
Yeah.
So kids would go compete at schools, programs that we would, pretty consistently have better results than, and they wouldn't give us a look. Those athletes are not looking past us now. When I was on the D2 side, I hated that. Now that we're on the other side, it's not too bad. I'm glad that we're getting consideration from some very, very good student athletes. So, yeah.
So, I mean, I assume the meets are a lot bigger when you're, running D1 as compared to before, right?
In track and field and cross country, doesn't change a lot for us. We before we were Division 1, we were taking our best kids to the Mount Sac relays and the Brian Clay Invite in California every spring, where not just the best D1 athletes were. I mean, this spring our team camp was literally right next to the Bowerman Track Club's group.
Yeah.
Grant Fisher is standing right next to our team camp. Our young kids were kind of freaking out, fanboying over that. But, we've competed on big stages for a long time. The national stage, that's different. The top level of Division 2 is very good, but the depth of Division 1 compared to Division 2, it's a big step forward.
So I guess because there's like not postseason banned, but you're not eligible for the first few years. Uh,
Right.
I guess how do you prepare for, I guess maybe the casual meets a little bit harder just because that's kind of what I guess the goal is. The goals change when you're not postseason eligible, right?
Right. We can compete at conference
Yeah.
championships, OBC, cross country, indoor, outdoor. That's kind of the pinnacle of our season. But we definitely, this indoor season, we took some of our best athletes to Boston University during the indoor season. It's the fastest track in the country. I mean, that's where all the American indoor records are set, and the pros fly out there to break records on that track for a reason. It's fast. So we took our best kids there. We took a group to the Drake Relays. We went out to Azusa to the Brian Clay meet. We were doing our best to facilitate some very, very high level opportunities for our student athletes. And we'll continue to do that when we're postseason eligible. But um, that is something that we do that a lot of other mid-major D1s comparable to us don't do on the scale that we do. So that's something, that we're trying to, I guess, make up for that in some ways and make sure that even if we can't compete on a national stage or have kids qualify for an NCAA regional round in track and field, and we had a couple that would have last year. Noah Huffnagel ran 29:12 outdoors. He would have made the regional round in the 10K, but he did get some high level opportunities.
So you spoke a little bit earlier about having to, I guess, forego some transfers because people wanting to run.
Mhm.
Is there a little bit of I don't know, pride? Is there a little bit of like when you have a kid that transfers to Iowa State, which is it's in a huge conference,
Mhm.
Yeah, is there
Yeah.
a little bit like I guess you're proud of that kid that the kid could transfer to a even be eligible to transfer to such a big program?
Yeah, he's not the first. We've got
Yeah.
another that transferred to on the women's side. It was a conference champion for us in cross country last fall. She's finishing up grad school at Cincinnati. We've had another a couple years ago that went for a grad program at Charlotte. I think they're ranked sixth in the Southeast region right now. Um, Another that went to Mizzou, had a year left, and he went there for law school, and all of those kids competed very, very well, so far that transferred out. Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to the fact that, you know, uh, at the upper level of Division II, there's still some really good athletes that can be quite competitive on the D1 stage.
So are there any programs? Well, first, is this the most exciting time you've gone through in your tenure at USI because all the change?
Most exciting? No, it's it's
Well,
it's been a lot of work. It's been the hardest I've worked in my entire career without question. Because we're I it has been it's been great in some aspects. I think the biggest positive for me is I've been doing this for 28 years. When you come in as a 26-year-old first year coach, 25, 26, whatever I was then, you've got a big chip on your shoulder. And you want to come and prove your worth, and it took us a few years when I started out with the program for us to start having kids that were all Americans and then kids winning national titles. And it took a little bit, but I had a chip on my shoulder. And after you've done it for a while, that chip kind of fades away, and came back in a big way when we made this transition. I felt like I was that kid, all over again, trying to climb that hill. So it's been really reinvigorating for me. It's been fun in a lot of ways, but it's been a lot of work. But I love what I do. I love building and coaching. So it's yeah.
how have you, over the course of those years, evolved your practice and like your coaching style, or do you think you've kept it pretty consistent, through the whole almost 30 years now?
No, it's definitely changed and it's evolved. And you know the there's a quite a bit of camaraderie and sharing of knowledge, in the coaching ranks. And I've got a circle of friends, that I've leaned on for information. I think coaches that are successful over a long period of time, the sport changes and evolves, and sometimes it's trends that, you know, come and go, but I've done this long enough to know what really works. And I some of the kids that I recruited and then coached back in the early 2000s, I tell them that they were apologize, but you guys were kind of guinea pigs, like I made a lot of mistakes when I was coaching you guys. When they asked me, why are these kids so fast now? Well, first of all, kids are faster across the board. It's shoe technology, it's recovery tools, it's nutrition, it's so many things. And top level athletes, to be honest with you, are just a lot more, I would say, as a whole at the high school level, dedicated, no, but the top level ones, they're dialed in.
Yeah.
They're really dialed in. So yeah, I mean, on any given day, I'll talk to, one or two different coaches. I was on the phone with Joe Franklin today, the former New Mexico coach who's at Louisville, because he's coached at altitude for 15 years and now he's back at sea level.
Yeah.
And, it was like, hey, what do these tempo numbers mean? It's been so long, so yeah, I mean, there's great camaraderie in the coaching ranks, and I think that's a big reason why the sport continues to evolve because there's a lot of sharing of information.
That kind of brings me to something, I guess. What about for different climate, because you run in different climates, is there any
Mhm.
type of thing you have to tell your athletes, to expect when you run in? I'm just going to use Colorado as an example, but feel free to plug any place in that you want.
Yeah, certainly, and we make adjustments with training here in Evansville because from mid-August when practice starts, until you get into those mid-October mornings when the dew point and humidity are finally starting to crack. And we've been really lucky the last week and a half. It's been awesome. But go back 2 weeks ago, it was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
We had a morning we had scheduled a critical velocity session. It was supposed to be 1K repeats. The dew point was 79, the humidity was 98% at 6 a.m. And I mean, it was, even though it was only like 75 degrees, it was just impossible to do the workout that we had scheduled. So we changed it to 400s on short recovery. And then even at that, we had to cut it short. You have to be flexible, and work with conditions. I've never coached at altitude. I've had kids race national championships at altitude. And it's a disadvantage when you're coming from sea level and there's not a lot you can do. You can't acclimate in
Yeah.
that short amount of time. It takes months, really, at altitude. But you can race smart, and racing at sea level, you can make the mistake of running the first kilometer, first mile, way under pace and get away with it a little bit. At altitude, if you're a sea level kid going to altitude, if you make that mistake, it's a wrap.
So, because of, I guess, you've coached there, what are some of the best, I guess, because when you recruit, what are some of the best, I guess, things you can, I guess, tell an athlete when you're recruiting them, I guess, if that makes sense? Because I'm sure the
Sure.
D1, I'm sure the D1 thing's a giant, I guess, aid
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. It goes way past the numbers and the stats.
Yeah.
Um, if we're down to one scholarship offer left and it's a kid from Illinois who's ran 14:40 for 3 miles at Detweiler and he has a 2.3 GPA and he's barely going to be eligible. And we got a kid who's run 14:50 at Detweiler and he's going to get $6,000 in academic scholarship and he's got a 4.3 weighted GPA. We're gonna make the offer to that slower kid every
Yeah.
time because I know his level of responsibility. I know his level of dedication in all aspects of his life. Uh, and I know he's not going to be an academic casualty. Like we have kids that come in that are borderline. I think everybody deserves a chance, but those things matter. It gets down to the last few spots on a roster, and we have an unlimited roster. We don't have a cap, but we do have. We've had to tighten walk on standards. It used to be if you run 435 and 1010, you could walk on. We've tightened that down. Last year it was 430, 10 flat. Next year it's 425, 945 because the interest level that we're getting, if we don't tighten it somewhat, we're going to have 50 plus guys on the roster, and if it gets to that point, it's like herding cats.
Yeah, it gets kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we, I guess, kind of touched around it earlier. What was the most exciting time you've ever had as the USI coach?
Oh man, there's a few moments. I think back to I think it was 1997, the first women's team. I coached the women for a couple years before I started coaching the men. Bill Stegemuller, who initiated the program at USI, he was still coaching the men's program. So I started out with the women. I think it was '97 we made the national meet, and that had never happened with the women's program before. We were in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I got up at 6 a.m. before the team did their shakeout to go out for a run. And our team van, the girls had taken white shoe polish, and I promised them I would get a tattoo if they made it. So I get up at 6 a.m. in the morning and white shoe polish on the window of the van that says, "We want the tattoo." And I thought, okay, it's on. They're gonna they're gonna do this. Like they believe, they believe that we're going to punch our ticket, and they did. The next Monday, I come to practice, and they asked if I got it, and I said, "Yeah." They didn't believe me, and I showed them. I followed through on it. The reality is, I was going to get an eagle tattoo anyway. I just kind of used it as a motivational ploy, but that was a big moment. We've had several athletes that have won national titles, and those moments are indescribable. And I don't think there's one of them that's been better than the other.
And I'm sure the pride level of a coach there is absurd.
Yeah, it does.
The
That's a feeling that doesn't get old.
so because of this, I guess, new stature and being in Division 1, is there a, probably not, but is there a way you change coaching kids? Do you think any kids been intimidated by the jump? Just a mental thing, because running is a lot of mental,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. No, from a coaching standpoint, nothing changes. I mean, we've had with what we've done in the past, we've had girls run as fast as 16:05 for
Yeah,
5K, and two different guys that have ran 13:38 and 13:39 for 5K. Now, at the Division 1 level, if you put together a squad where you've got 7 athletes on the line that are that good, you can make a national meet.
yeah,
That's a good D1 team if you've got 7 of them. We've usually had one a year, not 7. And we didn't have the scholarship resources to recruit the kind of talent base where we could have 7 of them in any given year. We know that from a training standpoint, what we've done has produced that. We just now need to produce it on a mass scale. And we believe that we have the financial resources now to be able to do that. And the recruiting uh, prowess, if you will, with being Division 1, where you know kids kids that are state top 3 in their state meets are looking at us, and it's just been kind of hit and miss with that in the past, and now it's pretty consistent.
so I don't. How big of a factor do you think? I'm sure the school took all this different sports in mind, and they, to some degree, when they made the jump. How big of a contribution do you think the track and cross country made to the ability to want to go D1?
Well, that's a good question. Um, to be honest, I haven't really thought about that. We are the one program because of the nature of our sport. All ball sports, they have a schedule, like a
Yeah,
conference schedule where everyone plays at everyone, and vice
yeah,
versa. Um, Cross country and track's not that way. We set our
yeah,
schedule and we go to the Greater Louisville Classic. Last weekend we were at Indiana State. We pick and choose, and as a result of that, we've competed against Division 1 schools the entire time that I've been here. We've always had that crossover, and we've always been very successful. 3 years ago we went to Illinois State for their cross country invite. There were 13 teams there. There were 12 D1s and us, and we finished second to Illinois. I think seeing that, and hey, it's possible. I'm sure it contributed. Um, when it gets right down to it, athletics is a marketing tool for
Yep.
universities. It absolutely is. It helps with university growth, with recognition. Uh, I think that's a big part of this Division One move to grow the stature of the university. So we're kind of brand ambassadors. That's what athletes do, and hopefully we've been able to contribute to that, and hopefully we can help to continue to grow the brand that is USI.
Because of the success of the team and individual athletes there, is it where do you think, well, here, where do the majority of your recruits usually come from? I'm sure they're spread out, but is there like a
They are by and large, it's Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky,
yeah.
just because of geography.
Hmm.
Titus Winders and his brother Silas, they were from Tennessee. Brendan Devine was an All-American for us. He was from New York. Solomon Bennett came to us from Las Vegas, Nevada. Usually with the kids that are a long way away, like it's impossible for me to recruit 50 states.
Yeah.
With those kids that are from far outer reaches, that's our recruiting focus. But I get emails from kids from all over the place, and sometimes it's a match, and sometimes it isn't. So Illinois and Indiana are the big two. We've consistently had solid kids on our roster from Kentucky, sometimes Tennessee. We've had some from Missouri. Emily Roberts, our school record holder in the 5K, she was from Ohio. We've had a few from Michigan, primarily states around us.
Yeah, the 5 or 6 states that kind of surround the. Do you think the D1 labeling helps you actually expand outward a little bit?
Oh, it does. I mean, it's amazing the emails I get from kids. How did you know about us? And I think it just comes down to when kids are searching, they're looking for D1 school.
Yep.
With this major. So I think we're on the radar of a lot more kids that are only looking D1, and that's most of them. It definitely expands our recruiting base.
Does it also help, I guess, that it's easier to retain? Would you say it's probably going to be easier, and this is in the future, retain kids for all 4 or 5 years because of the fact that you are Division One?
Oh man, the transfer portal has changed things so
Yeah.
much. Our retention rate has always been very good. There have been very few instances outside of the D1 transition where kids left before they had their bachelor's degree. We've had plenty that, like for instance, Gavin Pryor, exercise science major. He went to Charlotte for a grad program that we don't offer. Nathan Hall left to go to law school at Mizzou. We don't have a law school, so we'll always, I think the grad student, that's kind of a different animal.
Yeah.
Transfer portal though is, you see a lot of movement, but most of the time when you see that movement, it's because a coach has left, or kids are unhappy with the coaching situation. And we've been pretty solid with retention for a long time. I don't think the D1 part helps retention. I think it's just kind of, what's the culture of the program.
Because of, you said, there's I just had a question and I completely lost it, so it's going to move on. You got the job at 25 or 26, you said?
Mm-hmm. I was
How did that
20. Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Well, here's how it happened. I was going to be a high school PE teacher and high school cross country coach. Took an elementary PE teaching job as my first offer in Carpentersville, Illinois, up near Elgin, so northwest suburbs of Chicago. I was about 3 or 4 months into that, and I realized that there's no way I was going to do that for the next 30 years. So after that year was up, I started looking at options. I thought, well, maybe I'll apply to the fire department. Coach Stegemuller asked if I wanted to help with the team. Thought about that for a little while and decided, I think that would be a great move for me. So for several years, I worked full time at what used to be Gillis Cycling. It's now Ultimate Fit. managed the running department there, and I was part-time at USI, as a head coach of both programs. And the position evolved to where I was full-time, and now we have myself and a full-time assistant. So a lot has changed since I started there. But it's funny how life just kind of points you in certain directions. One decision you make leads to another and another, and then here you are. So
Well,
had Southeast Missouri never transitioned from D2 to D1, I never would have left there. And maybe I'm doing something else now and I'm not coaching. It's just kind of where life led me, I guess. But I feel like it's where I need to be.
at least you got to stay in fitness still.
What's that?
You got to stay in the fitness realm.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So because the you have all what are the next I guess meets you have coming up, or what's I guess the next thing you gotta look forward to?
So we'll be at the Greater Louisville Classic on September 30th. It's maybe the largest collegiate meet in the country. I think there's 120 teams there. Split into three races. You can't put 120 teams in the line at once, but there's the gold, which is the premier race, and the blue and the silver. So likely we'll have a men's and women's squad, which they limit to 7 to 10 in the gold, and then the rest of our roster would compete in the blue or silver races. So that's a pretty high level meet. And then 2 weeks after that, Brooks LeCompte, the coach at University of Evansville, and myself and the Evansville Sports Commission, we are sort of co-hosting first year meet. It's the Angel Mounds Invitational, and that will be on Friday, October 13th. It's a morning meet, but we're hoping we can get a lot of the local high school kids out because the EVSC has their break that week. So yeah, I think we have around 20 teams coming in for the first year. We're hoping to continue to grow that, to where it's a 40 or 50 team meet down the road.
So do you think that actually do you like the fact now that both Evansville schools are on the same level of athletic competition?
No, I think it's great. I meet every Tuesday. I meet Brooks for dinner along with Marty Roji, who is the coach at Vincennes, but he actually lives in Fort Branch. So we meet every Tuesday on the north side. Just kind of our weekly coaches meeting, we call it. I think it's great. There's plenty of athletes to go around. We're not, and sometimes we're recruiting the same kids. Oftentimes we're not. They are sort of more of a mid-distance based program. Brooks was a 146 half miler in his prime, and that's kind of his baby. We're recruiting, steeplechase, 5K, 10K. It's certainly kids in that realm as well. But yeah, I think it's great that we're both. Hopefully the basketball teams can get on the same page and start playing once a year, because that would be a sellout at Ford Center every year.
Yeah, that'd be a cool event. We touched on the retention thing, and this is my question I forgot earlier. As a coach, do you now have to try to, I guess, learn not the rules, but how to manage the transfer portal?
Yeah, for sure. You can't contact an athlete until they are in the portal.
Yeah.
And I've certainly gotten emails and texts from kids before, saying they're interested. And the only thing we can say in response is, I cannot contact you until you are in the portal. And that's it. And once they are, then we can reach out and communicate with them. If kids are leaving and want to get on the portal, it's a pretty easy process for them to do. There's beyond the portal itself, there's a rule for everything. I probably ask a question to our compliance coordinator at least 4 times a week. Even if I'm pretty sure I know, I just want to double down and make sure.
And I assume most kids contact you early to gauge interest.
It gets earlier and earlier all the time. It's our sport is the recruiting cycle in our sport is really late compared to soccer, basketball, where, I mean, they're 20 class of 2025 kids. Most of them are already committing,
Yeah.
kids that just started their junior year of high school. I can't imagine in our sport trying to prognosticate a kid who's only competed 2 years in high school what they're going to do over the next 2 years because my gosh, I mean, we've got guys on our team that might have ran 920 as a senior in high school that didn't break 11 minutes when they were a sophomore.
Yeah.
You just don't know,
And,
but it's getting earlier. That is one thing that has changed with the D2 to D1 move. Division two, you kind of wait for the trickle down. Like, okay, November rolls around, these kids aren't committing, they're not getting the D1 offer they thought they would get. Then that's where we come in. Now we have to be on the front edge of it, So we had probably 40 recruits on campus this summer, in June, July, and we've never done that before.
so I guess you feel the need to be a little bit more aggressive when you're recruiting now, as opposed to where you just kind of have to wait for the trickle down. But in D2 now it's you have to kind of go out and be a little bit more
You've
aggressive with it.
yeah, with really good kids, you have to be in early for sure. you
Do,
know, uh, we can't come in late, this time of year with the kid, a senior. Sometimes if it's a kid who just has absolutely no credentials prior to now, and they just explode their senior year, and then no one has contacted them, and then you're coming in late and nobody else came in early, you've got a shot. But with really good kids, that have been all state in previous years, you've got to be in on it earlier. You probably have zero chance.
so I think this is my final question. You touched on when kids win nationals, that's a best moment. What are some of the other, I guess, best moments you think you've had during your tenure there?
Oh gosh.
Making you think.
Yeah, yeah. Our men, we had a run of 15 consecutive years that we won the GLVC team title in cross country. Um, year five was special because that was a benchmark. 10 was, 15 was super cool. Unfortunately, I was hoping we could say that our streak got its driver's license when we hit 16. But Lewis University, my buddy James Kearney at Lewis, they unfortunately stopped that from happening. But I like to feel like during that run we raised the level of competition in the GLVC because that team that did not win when it would have been 16 was they would have stomped some of our prior teams that won conference titles. It was just the league has come so far to the point that when we transitioned to the OVC, it was almost like a lateral move in our sport. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and there's been a lot of great moments. I got to have my daughter grow up with me, during the summers, hanging out with me at USI during the summers and going on, when kids would visit campus, she'd walk around. And by the time she was 8 or 9, she felt like she knew enough to lead the tours. And but the job has evolved and changed. I've been fortunate to have a great athletic director almost the entire time that I've been at USI. John Mark Hall has been our AD. He's fantastic. Dr. Roshan, our president, is fully supportive of our program and all the programs as well. And yeah, it's just a lot of things that I have to be grateful for at USI, which is why I've stuck around.
Well, thank you for doing the interview, Coach.
Oh, thanks, Hunter. I really appreciate it.
The That's all I have. If you have anything else to add, feel free. The
Yeah, I just wanted to mention again, October 13th, Angel Mountains Invitational. I believe the first race is at 9 a.m. Second race is at 10 a.m. Can't remember if it's men first or women first, but should be some high level competition right here in Evansville if anybody wants to come out and watch.
Well, this has been Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast, and that's all I got. Hey guys, this is Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe where you can. Thanks. Hey guys, this is Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe where you can. Thanks.